Max Verstappen finished second at the Hungarian Grand Prix, 15.080 seconds behind Lando Norris. That sounds like a comeback. But Verstappen's own words exposed something far more serious. "I don't understand how we are second." After qualifying 6th, spinning on Saturday, and fighting an RB22 that never truly came alive, Max still reached the podium. Then he delivered the warning Red Bull cannot ignore. When instead of the tires degrading, your car is degrading, then you have a big problem. So this was not proof that Red Bull had suddenly fixed everything. It may have been proof that second place hid one of Verstappen's most difficult races of the year. Because behind the result was a car losing performance, a driver fighting for control, and a gap to Norris that revealed how far Red Bull may really be from the front. Subscribe to the channel. To understand what Verstappen really showed in Hungary, you have to forget the second place trophy for a moment. Because the result and the reality were telling two completely different stories. On paper, second place looked impressive. Verstappen had qualified 6th. He had spun during a difficult Saturday. Red Bull had already admitted it did not have the pace to match Ferrari and McLaren in qualifying. Then, somehow, Verstappen finished second on Sunday. That should have looked like a major recovery. It should have suggested that Red Bull had found something overnight. A better setup. A smarter strategy. A hidden improvement. A car suddenly transformed when the race began. But Verstappen destroyed that interpretation with one sentence. "I don't understand how we are second." That is the key. Because drivers usually know when a result comes from genuine performance. They feel it in the braking zones. They feel it when the car rotates cleanly. They feel it when the rear remains stable. They feel it when they can attack without constantly correcting the car. Verstappen did not describe that kind of race. He described one of his most difficult weekends of the year. The RB22 remained hard to handle. The problems did not disappear just because the final classification looked better. And that is where the second place result becomes misleading. A strong position can hide a weak race. It can happen when rivals suffer problems. It can happen when incidents remove faster cars. It can happen when strategy opens a door that pure pace never could. The source does not provide a full lap-by-lap breakdown proving exactly how every position changed. But it strongly suggests that Verstappen's second place was not the result of a sudden Red Bull breakthrough. His own confusion points in the opposite direction. He was surprised. Not satisfied. Relieved, perhaps. But not convinced. And that matters more than the trophy. Because Verstappen is one of the best judges of whether a car is truly competitive. He knows what a winning Red Bull feels like. He knows the difference between controlling a race and surviving one. He knows when the car is helping him. And he knows when he is carrying the car beyond where it belongs. Hungary sounded like the second situation. That is why his next comment was even more serious. When instead of the tires degrading, your car is degrading, then you have a big problem. That line needs to be understood carefully. Tire degradation is normal in Formula 1. The rubber slowly loses performance. Grip fades. Lap times begin to drop. Drivers manage that by adjusting pace, protecting the tires, and choosing the right moment to pit. But Verstappen was describing something deeper. Not only the tires getting worse. The car itself becoming harder to drive. Imagine running in shoes that slowly lose grip. That is manageable. Now imagine the shoes also changing shape while you run. The balance feels different. Your foot moves inside them. Every step becomes less predictable. That is much closer to what Verstappen was describing. The car was not simply losing tire performance. Its behavior was deteriorating. The balance was fading. The confidence was disappearing. And when that happens, the driver cannot solve the problem with one small adjustment. He cannot simply protect the tires and wait. The entire relationship between driver and car begins changing lap after lap. That is why Verstappen called it a big problem. And this is what the final result hides. Second place usually creates confidence. It tells a team that the car is close. That only small improvements are needed. That the next victory may not be far away. But Verstappen's reaction suggested the opposite. The position was stronger than the package. The result was better than the feeling. And that creates a dangerous illusion for Red Bull. If the team looks only at second place, it may believe the weekend was rescued. If it listens to Verstappen, the warning is much louder. The RB22 was still difficult. The pace gap to Norris was still 15.080 seconds. And the driver himself could not explain how the car had reached second. That is not the foundation of a comfortable recovery. It is the sign of a result that may not be repeatable. And this is where Red Bull's Saturday comments become important. Laurent Mekies said qualifying had been difficult for both Max and Isaac. He admitted Red Bull did not have the pace to match Ferrari and McLaren that day. He also said the team's performance could vary significantly from one weekend to another. And if everything was not exactly right, it was very easy to fall backward. Those comments came after qualifying, not after the race. That distinction matters. There is no verified post-race statement from Max in the source explaining Verstappen's second place. No dramatic revelation. No confirmed upgrade. No claim that Red Bull found the answer overnight. The available evidence does not support that story. What it supports is instability. One weekend, the car may appear strong. Another weekend, the window becomes too narrow. One setup works. Another leaves the drivers fighting. And Hungary exposed just how quickly Red Bull could slip backward when the car was not operating perfectly. That may explain why Verstappen's sixth place in qualifying felt so important. It was not only one poor session. It showed how little protection Red Bull had when the car fell outside its ideal window. McLaren and Ferrari had stronger pace on Saturday. Verstappen spun. The RB22 looked difficult. Then Sunday produced second place. But the car did not suddenly feel fixed. That contradiction is the entire story. A better result did not mean a better car. And that is something fans often miss. The classification tells you where the driver finished. It does not tell you how much control he had. It does not tell you how many corners felt unstable. It does not tell you how much performance disappeared through the stint. It does not tell you whether the car could repeat the same result at the next race. Verstappen's words told us those things indirectly. He was confused because second place did not match the experience inside the cockpit. That is what makes this performance so revealing. He may have extracted far more than the car deserved. He may have benefited from events around him. He may have survived a race that could easily have produced a much weaker result. The source does not confirm one exact explanation. But it does make one conclusion very difficult to avoid. Red Bull did not suddenly solve Hungary. The result looked stronger than the underlying pace. And the 15-second gap to Norris supports that concern. 15.080 seconds is not a small tactical margin. It shows that McLaren controlled the race at a different level. Verstappen finished second. But he was not truly fighting for the win. That difference matters. A team can celebrate a podium. It cannot pretend the gap does not exist. Especially when the driver is already warning that the car itself feels like it is degrading. That phrase may be the most important clue of the entire weekend. Because tire degradation can sometimes be managed through setup. Car degradation suggests a broader loss of balance. As the race continues, the car may become harder to place. The driver may need more corrections. The rear may feel less secure. The front may stop responding the way it did earlier. Every lap becomes more expensive. And that can create a terrible cycle. The car becomes harder to drive. The driver makes more corrections. The tires are stressed more heavily. The balance gets worse. Then the car becomes even harder to drive. One problem feeds the next. That is why Verstappen's second place should worry Red Bull more than a fifth or sixth might have. A poor result would force the problem into the open. Second place can hide it. It can create relief. It can make the team believe the race was better than it really was. But Verstappen did not allow that. He said he did not understand the result. He called the race one of his most difficult of the year. And he repeated the same warning he had already used about the car degrading instead of only the tires. That consistency matters. It shows the problem was not one frustrated comment. It was the central feeling of his weekend. And the next question becomes unavoidable. If Verstappen could barely understand second place, what happens at the next circuit where the chaos does not help him? What happens when rivals complete clean races? What happens when the strategy does not create an opportunity? What happens when Red Bull's narrow operating window becomes even harder to reach? That is the real danger. Hungary may have given Verstappen a podium. It may also have exposed how vulnerable Red Bull has become. The team can no longer rely on the car always behaving in a predictable way. Max had already admitted performance could vary sharply from weekend to weekend. Verstappen then experienced exactly that kind of uncertainty. Sixth in qualifying. A spin. A difficult race. Second at the finish. None of those pieces fit together comfortably. And when a weekend produces a result that even the driver cannot explain, the team cannot treat it as proof of progress. It has to investigate the contradiction. Why was the car so difficult? Why did the performance fade? Why did Verstappen feel the car itself was degrading? And why did the final position look so much stronger than the pace suggested? Those are the questions that matter now. Not whether Red Bull found a hidden upgrade. The source confirms no such thing. Not whether Max delivered a dramatic post-race revelation. No verified statement supports that either. The real story is much less comfortable. Verstappen reached second while still feeling that the car was fundamentally wrong. That may be impressive for the driver. It is worrying for the team. Because a great driver can rescue one result. He cannot permanently hide a car that is losing balance, pace, and predictability. And this is where Verstappen's performance becomes almost impossible to judge through position alone. Second place usually says success. His words said survival. The trophy said recovery. The gap to Norris said limitation. And the car's behavior said the problem was still alive. That is what Verstappen truly showed in Hungary. Not that Red Bull was suddenly back. That even when Red Bull looked close on the results sheet, the real distance to the front may have been much larger than anyone wanted to admit. And the next part goes even deeper. Because once a driver says the car is degrading instead of the tires, the problem is no longer only pace. It becomes confidence. And when confidence disappears, even Verstappen cannot attack the same way forever. And once confidence begins to disappear, the driver starts paying for the problem in places the final timing screen cannot show. A Formula One car does not need to be completely undrivable to become dangerous to performance. It only needs to become unpredictable. A rear end that moves differently from one lap to the next. A front axle that responds cleanly in one corner, then refuses to turn in the next. A balance that feels acceptable on fresh tires, then slowly shifts until the driver no longer knows which end of the car to trust. That uncertainty changes everything. Because Verstappen's greatest strength is not only raw speed. It is commitment. He attacks braking zones because he believes the car will respond. He carries speed into corners because he understands where the grip should be. He corrects slides quickly because he can usually predict how the car will recover. But when the RB22 begins changing beneath him, that relationship breaks down.